Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive topic, literally the thing keeping executives awake at night right now. We're talking about the ultimate C-suite dilemma. We all know AI is incredibly powerful, right? But how on earth do you translate the super abstract, kind of fuzzy concept of AI governance into the cold, hard, unforgiving math of profit and loss? That is exactly where most organizations hit a brick wall. But today, we're diving into a really brilliant framework that bridges that exact gap, and it's built on some incredible work regarding AI governance P&L by Cachat.
So think about this for a second. What actually happens to a company's balance sheet when AI risk approaches 100%? Look, most companies right now are treating AI risk like it's just another line item, a totally manageable cost of doing business. But the math tells a chillingly different story. When ungoverned AI goes off the rails, it doesn't just hand you a neat, bounded penalty. It creates an existential formula. We're talking about an unbounded liability here. So stick with me, because we're going to break down exactly how you can prevent that from happening to your organization.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the AI financial disconnect. Second, the three core governance variables. Third, decoding the AI formulas. Fourth, the hidden process variable. Fifth, the IPE solution. And finally, number 6, moving from compliance to ROI.
Section 1. The AI financial disconnect. Right now, finance departments are looking at AI as this massive, completely unpredictable liability. Why? Because it completely lacks a clear profit and loss framework. And honestly, the core problem is just how we've traditionally thought about compliance. Historically, it's been viewed as a sunk cost, right? A defensive maneuver, a literal compliance checkbox. But the foundational work developed by Jose Luis Flores, which Cachat expanded on, argues something radically different. They say AI governance is a measurable financial imperative, period. Treat it as a sunk cost and you're just going to bleed money. But treat it as an ROI-driving strategy, now it becomes your competitive advantage.
Section 2. 3 core governance variables.
Now, what's really interesting here is how we can take the sprawling, insanely complex world of AI regulation and distill it down to just 3 critical financial variables. First up, we have RC, or regulatory cost. This is exactly what it costs you to build and maintain a compliant AI system, so your infrastructure, your audit readiness. Second is IC, incident cost. Now, this is the nightmare scenario. It's the cost of a governance failure. Think fines, lawsuits, and the huge reputational damage when your AI hallucinates or breaches privacy. And finally, GV, governance value. This is the risk-adjusted value of actually having a governed AI system. So RC, IC, and GV, keep those 3 in the back of your mind.
Section 3. Decoding the AI formulas.
So how do these 3 variables actually interact? Well, here's the formula every single CFO cares about most: governance ROI. This equation converts the totally abstract idea of being compliant into a hard, actionable capital allocation decision. Basically, governance ROI equals governance value minus regulatory cost divided by regulatory cost. To maximize your ROI, you have to do 2 things at the exact same time. You got to shrink your regulatory build costs, your RC, without sacrificing even a drop of your governance value, your GV. The reality is most companies completely fail at that formula because they get stuck in what we call a narrow compliance profit. They try to build their compliance infrastructure from scratch every single time they deploy a new AI system. And what happens? Custom documentation and bespoke audit trails absolutely inflate their regulatory cost. But if you want a widened compliance profit, you achieve that by utilizing pre-built, pre-deployed process libraries. Suddenly, your RC drops way down because you aren't reinventing the wheel. And your GV absolutely skyrockets because your AI is grounded in proven, verified processes, so that profit spread widens out on both ends.
Okay, I really want you to listen closely to this next definition, because this is, without a doubt, the most powerful and frankly terrifying formula in the entire framework. The true cost of ungoverned AI equals incident cost times 100, divided by 100 minus your risk percentage. Let that sink in. This isn't just some abstract theory we're kicking around. This is absolute compounding mathematics. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. Think about the denominator of that equation. As your risk percentage approaches 100, your denominator gets closer and closer to 0. And we all know how math works. When your denominator approaches 0, your total cost, your liability, approaches infinity. Ungoverned AI doesn't just create a manageable little fine you can pay off. It creates an unbounded financial black hole. And this existential math is exactly why proactive governance isn't just a nice to have, it is quite literally an absolute necessity for survival.
Section 4. The hidden process variable. Now for the big reveal. There is a secret, missing variable that determines whether those formulas we just looked at result in a widened profit or an infinite, catastrophic loss. I want to pause for a second and just let this quote really sink in. AI cannot govern what it cannot understand, and it cannot understand what has not been documented. Wow. That right there is the core thesis of Integrated Process Excellence, or IPE. Think about it. An AI system operating on undocumented assumptions. That's just a liability waiting to happen. Process documentation is the hidden variable.
When you bring in thorough, highly structured process documentation, it systematically moves every single P&L equation we've talked about in your favor. It unlocks governance value because your AI finally has verified knowledge to work with. It controls your regulatory costs because you aren't building everything from scratch anymore. And it prevents incident costs by giving your AI a grounded, factual process to operate from, which systematically reduces your overall risk exposure. Make no mistake, documentation isn't just some administrative governance input. It is the absolute foundation of the whole operation.
Section 5. The IPE pack solution.
So, naturally, you're probably wondering, how do we practically deploy all this documentation without spending millions of dollars and years of effort? Well, John Cachat created a brilliant plug-and-play architecture known as an IPE pack. What a C-suite executive is actually buying here is a massive, pre-built library of process intelligence. You get a structured process model, KPI cause and effect tables, and SIPOCs, which, by the way, simply map out your suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customers. This instantly closes the governance gap against massive regulatory standards like the EU AI Act or NIST, simply because the structured knowledge layer is already built out for you.
And the sheer scale of this is honestly incredible. These IEP packs are currently available across 81 distinct functional areas. We are talking about everything from injection molding and aerospace manufacturing all the way over to complex healthcare domains, pharmaceutical supply chains, and standard enterprise business functions. So it systematically raises your governance value across the entire enterprise, not just in some isolated little IT silo.
Just to prove this is a rigorous operational reality and not just theory, IP utilizes a solid 6-step framework. First, you establish a positive environment. Then, you define the process hierarchy and build out that structured intelligence. Once it's actually documented, you communicate it directly to your AI systems. And finally, you measure everything via KPIs and close the loop with continuous improvement. Every single step in this framework directly manages and optimizes those P&L variables we discussed earlier. It is a completely closed-loop system designed for financial safety.
Section 6. From compliance to ROI.
Let's see how all this builds into a complete strategic paradigm shift. Look, for the past decade, organizations have been totally obsessed purely with data architecture. Cleaning data, storing data, building massive data lakes and warehouses. But here's the harsh truth. An outdated focus solely on logical data management will not save you anymore. The critical new necessity is process architecture. You absolutely need documented, measured, and controlled processes layered perfectly on top of that data to actually govern AI successfully. Data plus process equals real AI ROI.
Which brings us to one final, absolutely vital question for every executive and focused learner watching this explainer today. Are you treating AI governance as an expensive, annoying compliance checkbox, or are you treating it as your most critical financial strategy? Because as the math clearly proves, the true cost of getting this wrong literally approaches infinity. But if you have the right process architecture in place, it becomes your absolute greatest competitive advantage. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this transforms how you view the math behind AI governance.